Good morning, Grant Sernick from Third Wave. It's Benita Lee, and we're gonna go unscripted again, off script.
All right. Well, hello,
Hi.
and nice to see you again.
Yeah,
What, I mean, it's been a couple weeks, I
yeah.
think, a week and a half,
And
if
I've
that's
I've
what it is.
moved.
You've moved. So where did you move?
I moved into the burbs. I went from
Oh,
Beltline uh, up to the burbs. I'm closer to the mountains now.
oh, sweet. Very
hmm
nice.
But I
Ve-
did it to save money.
Mm-hmm. Because we
Um,
are all tightening up our belts here because things have gotten pretty crazy. And
yeah, no,
it feels like it's been a year since we last spoke because in the trade world, in the international trade world, things are just progressing so unbelievably quickly.
yeah, no.
And it's a little bit hard to keep up. And so if you've been moving, you have maybe fortunately been
Yeah,
offline and not following along.
I think I'm less stressed than everyone else here.
Well, and maybe that's a good thing. I mean, I've spoken to a lot of people where that sort of like the net of it is that if only they had not engaged at the start, things have sort of like he something happens and then they don't do anything and then it backtracks and so it's as if nothing happened. That's not totally true for all things, but certainly on a number of things that's happened. And so let's
Yeah, like catch me up. What's been going on in days of our lives?
in a day. These are the days of our trade lives. So okay, so there are. I mean, the big thing from where I'm sitting is that the duties on goods from China have increased even further to 245% or potentially 245%. I don't believe the CSMS has dropped on that yet. Certainly, I haven't seen it. Not that I keep such close attention on it, but the the impact is severe. And I think that it is, again, I think, well, our goal here is not to necessarily
Severe
weigh in.
on the
Well,
Americans or China.
on, on American companies, importers from China. And, I think our goal collectively, you and mine, is not to necessarily get political here. So I don't
No, we're not
mean
picking
to,
sides.
yeah, we're not picking sides other than to say that the consequence of these tariffs are having a very immediate set of ripples that
hmm
I don't think can be minimized, right? And this is the goal. Like the goal is to have these kind of things. The problem is that they're painful, and the adjustment is going to be a painful adjustment. And the challenge with the method by which Trump is going about, or the Trump administration is going about what he's doing, is not providing um, any confidence that there is a clear endpoint that he's shooting for, and so we're in this sort of variable mess that people aren't exactly clear where they need to move to, right? So
Yeah,
let's go ahead.
I find that really interesting, and it goes along with what I found on that Michelle Frenier shared that poll from um, the CBP's social media account. And it was like a
Okay.
poll, like, what is your biggest concern right now? The amount of tariffs, the enforcement period and deadlines, something else, and then ACE. And do you know what people were most concerned about?
What's that?
Like, I want you to guess. Like, I want to know if you're.
Oh, so uh, I would. Well, those are, you should be concerned with all of those things. My feeling is that it's not Ace because the vast majority of people don't engage with ACE or understand how ACE works. Um, and so,
That's
um,
another
you know,
problem.
well, it is and it is. Like, unless you need to know, you don't really need to know, right? So, I mean, listen, she might have a following of hardcore trade compliance people that actually live in
No,
that
no, no.
world,
Like
but
the 342 participants came from people that are following the CBP's social
oh,
media.
right, it's a CBP. Okay, right.
Yeah,
Okay, so
yeah. So it's
but it could be if this is CBP. I mean, who follows CBP? Like, you have to be a pretty big trade geek to follow CBP.
yeah, you do.
Um, and so maybe that quality, that people fall
No, but
into.
still, um, the answer that got the most was I picked enforcement because I was
Oh,
like,
that would have been my guess,
yeah,
was like the quick enforcement period, because there's
yeah.
zero chance you can backtrack from that.
When do we need to have this? You know, all our ducks in a row. But
Right.
people wanted to know the amount of tariffs. I was like, if we can't even get that simple math right, how are we going to
Well,
enforce
okay,
it?
so okay, the it's not getting it right. It's the nature of how these tariffs work. Okay, like, our world has changed dramatically in the last, well, let's call it 8 years. Okay, but it's really scaled in the last 3 months or 2 months, right? So
I've read
back
1984. I get it.
no no well, okay, listen, back 20 years ago, things were really simple. You were bringing in a product, it had a tariff. There was a tariff against it. You had a 10-digit code called an HTS code, and it dictated the duty rate, and that was the end of the story. There was no such thing as anything beyond that for just about everything. Okay, yes, there was anti-dumping and stuff like that, but it didn't matter, right? Most people didn't really have it, and it was such a small piece of the pie. If you had anti-dumping, you would know it and deal with it, right? And then in
Aviation,
20
yeah, I don't know. I don't know about 20 years because 20 years ago is just when like NAFTA came into play.
no,
So
okay, so
NAFTA
what
came
I'm saying,
into play to solve this.
well, listen, forget about NAFTA. I mean, okay, I'm just saying pre
Okay, okay.
2018, pre
Sorry, I'm
2018,
getting too
it
technical
was
on you.
you're getting one duty rate. You were either column A or column one or column two,
Right.
MFN, not MFN. Everybody was MFN, so it was really column one,
Yeah.
and you knew your duty rate, and that was it.
Yes.
Okay, and then in 2018, Trump introduced the China tariff, which it was the two. Well, it was there were 232s, and then there were 301s,
Mhm.
and the 301s imputed a 25% duty on top of the column one duty rate.
Right.
Okay, and that was the introduction of stacked tariffs.
Yeah, and I feel like that kind of leveled the playing field because um, up until that time, China was producing like for the last 20 years, China just got better and better and better and better at producing at like a affordable price. And us Westerners were having our moving our companies manufacturing over there and getting all the benefits of low wage labor and then fast, cheap goods, right? So these tariffs, these 301s, 232s, they kind of like took care of that disparity between like the West's working population and our like our move to being like knowledge workers to
So, so maybe like
yeah,
you're saying that,
I think so.
that it was
I think that
it
those
was
worked. Those worked.
well, okay, so that was okay. So here's I like the point,
Yeah,
and here
yeah.
here would be my counter. Is like, in 2018,
Mhm,
25% tariffs on China were seen as crazy, crazy town, and
mhm.
whatever. Today, you're in a position to say, hey, listen, that maybe level the playing field. Okay,
Yeah,
we're in exactly the same world today where people are saying things are crazy. I would agree that, listen, we had 4 years of Trump, then we had 4 years of Biden. So we had Republican, then we had Democrat. The Democrats did not change. They had the ability to change the tariffs and 301s, 25%. They didn't do that. So they must have agreed that it was beneficial.
Mhm.
And now Trump is, quintupling down on
Yeah,
sort of that
exactly.
idea. But the point I was trying to make is that sort of this idea of stacked tariffs. So you have
Mhm.
your primary tariff code, and then you have a 301, let's say, that was a secondary tariff code on
Mhm.
top of the first tariff code. And it made it more complicated, right?
Mhm.
Because the question you had asked was like, well, how did we get to like not understanding what the tariff rate is, right? For
Well,
goods. And so let me just finish the point. So
okay.
in today's world, we are in a position where you can have up to 5 different tariff lines. So this idea of stacking different tariff codes together to add up to some number that in today's world with China is 245% makes it's not always 245% because it depends on which stack duty codes apply to your movement of goods,
Right.
right? And so it's the method by which these tariffs are being added or stacked one on top of the other that is creating the confusion.
I wish we
And
had like a
a cheat sheet.
no, a cartoonist like kind of like play out what we were,
Oh,
you know what I mean? Like
well,
showing
yeah,
us on the B3 and the 7501.
yeah. Oh, well, that would be really good. Maybe we could get AI to do something like that. But
Yeah, yeah.
so listen, the problem, like this, that articulation that you're saying, how it's just confusing and nobody knows what the tariff rate is insanely destabilizing as a position to have, right? That
Right.
you don't even know. Like, listen,
No.
if it was 245% and you knew it was 245%, that ain't good, but at least you have certainty, right?
Right.
And you can make decisions around the certainty. When you don't have certainty, now you don't know the answer, and the consequences are significant. So I was talking to a customer of ours
Mhm.
yesterday, and she was saying, okay, so they're in the aerospace industry and they import a certain set of wiring harnesses for uh, from China to their manufacturing facilities domestically, and they have imports. I think they had a shipment that was coming in is worth $100,000, let's say.
Coming
Okay,
into the
well,
US.
coming into the U.S. So let's just break down what that means. If your shipment is $100,000 and the new duty rate is 245%,
Mhm.
then you are paying an incremental $245,000
Yeah.
in duties for that one shipment. $245,000
That
on
ain't
a
cheap.
shipment that previously had a duty rate maybe of $24,000 or $25,000, right? That's a 10x cost increase
Mhm.
on those goods. Okay, and so it shouldn't be like this. It shouldn't be unusual or strange that the companies are going to say this is not workable. We have to stop our shipments,
Mhm.
right?
So I think like what word Trump might want to add to his dictionary is sanction, because in essence, that's a sanction.
So it is, but I think that there's a reason why he is like. So there are limits to the powers of what the president has. I believe sanctions is required to go through Congress. The whole point of what he's trying to do or what he's doing is he's using tools at his disposal that do not require.
Arguably,
Well,
debatably
okay,
at his disposal.
arguably correct. It's going to
Yeah.
be litigated in the courts
Mhm.
that um, don't require congressional approval to impact. And listen, you can argue it, and it will be litigated, but we're talking 5 to 10 years down the line, we'll get an answer on whether is legal or not legal.
That's
And
how
meanwhile,
slow
we
it
have
works.
to deal today, right, with goods are not passing through the border without duties being paid.
Mhm.
And so there are a lot of knock-on effects on this. And so, I was reading just a quick hit by Peter Tershwell of the Journal of Commerce. And, he was saying that eastbound bookings from China
Mhm.
have dropped 30 to 60% off. 30 to 60% off. And that was with 145% duties.
Yeah.
Okay. And so,
Don't you think that's, like, so ironic that, like, the port workers were just, like, on strike because they weren't getting paid enough, and there was safety issues, and there was hours of work issues, and now they don't even have work. There's there's 80 blank sailings from
well,
China.
so how about do me a favor and define what a blank sailing is.
A blank sailing is like in the trucking world, what do they call that? A backhaul? Yeah.
Okay.
In
Yeah,
in the
I think
trucking
so.
world, they call that a backhaul. I think people
Okay.
understand that. So in a blank sailing, uh, you have no containers. You have no containers to take back. And that's what
Well,
caused that whole container crisis back during the pandemic.
so okay, so I mean, there's another element to it, which is maybe a little bit also consequential. So I think it would be more akin in the airline world. So okay, you have a schedule that you're
Mhm.
going to have for your vessels. Okay, and that gets released well ahead of time. So Maersk is going to have a set of they have a Trans-Pacific eastbound TP and it goes on every 2 weeks, and it has a certain set of loops. And what they will either do, or what they could do, is they could say, we're just canceling this totally, so we're not doing this, that we're not moving, or we're going to skip a bunch of ports, or we're not offloading containers to in a certain on a certain port or something like that. The goal of it, from what I understand, is to reduce supply, right? Because in the container world, it is a highly supply demand market, and so if there is a ton of overcapacity or oversupply of the movement of goods, then the price for getting room on a vessel goes down dramatically. And this is one of the real challenges of international shipping and these big companies,
Mhm.
is that because competition is actually reasonably high and the market rate is set right at around the profitability margin of these vessels, is
Hey,
if you have
we're gonna need
over.
to get an expert come on and explain this part, but what were we getting into, like, when we I think everyone understands
Oh,
that, if a
so well,
plane is
so
full, they're making
yeah,
money. If a plane is empty, they ain't making
you know,
money.
okay, right. And Americans especially are well attuned to flights getting canceled, right?
Right.
So you are getting ready to go for Thanksgiving dinner and with your family, and all of a sudden your flight gets canceled and now you're totally screwed, right?
Mhm.
That's very much akin to what is happening today in the ocean container world. So what we're seeing is that the volume of bookings, which is a precursor to sort of like buying a plane ticket, right? It's not it's not your boarding pass. You don't have your boarding pass, which would be the bill of lading essentially, but you've bought a ticket. That nobody's buying tickets anymore. Nobody's booking, right? Why aren't they booking? They're not booking, not because the price of transportation is so high,
Uncertainty, like, they
but
don't
there's
know.
uncertainty and the cost and the
And the
known
and the
cost of.
tariffs, and the tariffs.
Exactly. The tariffs are totally punitive and not like companies can't operate that way. And so they're just saying, don't send me my stuff, right?
Yeah.
And
Did you
and
hear the
so
story
that
about Boeing?
uh, go ahead, explain.
It takes like years to build 737s. And, Boeing has a monopoly on 737s. And China has 40 of them, I think, ordered, that were supposed to be delivered in 2025. Well, Chinese government has retaliated and said we're not to take delivery from Boeing.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if a deposit was paid.
I'm
Who
sure
eats
deposits were paid, but
who
it doesn't
eats
really
that?
matter.
It's like these 737s. I can't remember. It's funny that you use the $100,000, because I think this was $100 million. So this
Right.
turns into 40 million or 40 billion, 4 billion, sorry, $4 billion, $4.2 billion that Boeing is losing
Mm-hmm.
because the Chinese aren't taking delivery of their product that they spent making, or they made and spent time with for the
Yeah.
last 2-3 years.
Yeah. Yeah. No. So
Yeah,
so it's not, and
that's
it's
like
not
a
just,
big mama of
and it's not
examples.
just. That's right. It's not just 737s. It's all Boeing planes, and
Mhm.
beyond that, it's actually parts and components, not taking delivery. Okay. One might think what's going to happen is that Boeing planes are just like not going to be flying anymore because they can't get, like, the Chinese government won't be allowing in Boeing parts to service their planes. The more likely scenario is they're going to start manufacturing them in China, right? The component parts. So they're going to be, again, IP and China, or IP rights and China. One of the big complaints about China is that they don't respect
Care.
IP law, right?
Right. They
And
figure if you tell us to make your product and have it exactly to spec, that spec don't belong to you no more.
well, so listen, it's not okay. I used to work in the aerospace world,
Okay.
and we had to make parts and stuff like that. And my concern is less really about, like, the spec for how you're supposed to make a certain set of parts and heat treat it and coat it and stuff like that. My guess is, they have the drawings, right? Because all the airlines have the drawings for many of the systems on the plane, so they do have access to a lot of them. And they're going to manufacture them as well as we would manufacture them here in the West. Um, but they're just not going to pay, like, Boeing design, well, whether it's Boeing or any of the tier 1 or 2 or 3 aerospace manufacturers that designed and owned the rights to it and own the rights to manufacturing the parts and the profit to it, right? All of a sudden, these parts are now just going to be manufactured in China, and there's going to be no royalty paid back to those that are owed the royalty, by
Right.
virtue of not, well, A, not caring, but B, that we're in a trade war, and you can't, like, the rules that we used to live by aren't the same anymore, right? We're at war. And so it just creates again, things are moving so fast, and we are in this crazy world where there's a move and a counter move and another counter move and so on. I think China has said um, they're not increasing. When Trump imputed the first 145%, China responded with an equal amount, I believe. And then they came out and they said, listen, I don't care if you want to increase import duties any further. Effectively, at 145%, you have priced us out of the game, and it's just stupid to keep on increasing the price because we're out of the game. We're not going to increase our counter
Right.
tariffs any
We'll
further
sort
because you're already
we'll
priced
sort
out of the game.
ourselves. Yeah.
right? And so on. Now, what they have done though is that they have basically embargoed. I don't know if you saw this story. They've
No, I didn't.
embargoed um, rare earth minerals to there
Oh,
are
yes, I
seven.
did see that.
I believe it
Um,
was like seven. It was like rhodium and
oh, I can tell you.
yeah. But if you pull up the story, um,
Yeah, let me tell you, because this one was really interesting. I have sources that come to me and they're like, hey, like, I don't know how much you know about critical minerals, but look at this research from this guy at JP Morgan. Here, I want to show you a graph. How do I get to that graph? Go ahead.
well, I was going to yeah. So um, you know what I'm going to do? Um, I'm going to share my screen here and
Oh,
just bring up.
sorry, I was going to share.
Okay, well, I beat you. I beat you to the punch here.
Oh, you did?
I think.
I'm still working on it.
And we're gonna go here. But
The
yeah,
share wars.
China just triggered a minerals embargo. Are we ready for what comes
Perfect.
next? Right.
Perfect.
So tungsten. I know rhodium was in there.
Lithium.
Lithium. Yeah. And so all of these minerals are cobalt, not just lithium, cobalt. You know, all of these minerals are required for making advanced things like batteries and
Phones.
the phones, computer
Laptops,
chips,
TVs, EV vehicles,
EV vehicles.
semiconductors.
You got it. And
Okay,
so,
let's bring the Canada story into this.
sure.
Yeah, like
Well,
because here we are, we're a couple of Canadians, and for the last two episodes, we just talked about like like the U.S. and China. Now let's bring the Canadian story into it because nobody ever talks about this, but like Canada is mineral rich.
indeed. That is, if we have one thing or we do one thing, minerals is
Mm-hmm.
what we got. We got a lot of land and a lot of minerals.
Mm-hmm. A lot of land.
Yeah. And well, okay, well, and maybe to just fully color the story. So, the Trump administration, to an extent, to their credit, understands that the quest for minerals is um, a priority for them, right?
Right.
So we all heard
Greenland.
about Greenland, and we've heard about a mineral deal in the Ukraine. Whether that's happened or not, we're still unclear. Um, and when he started talking about this, my initial reaction was, I don't understand. Again, as a Canadian, how the first call wasn't to the Prime Minister of Canada at the time, Justin Trudeau, and say, listen, how do we structure a deal to extract minerals from Canada,
Well, it's because
right?
he would say there's no business case. There's no business
Well,
case there.
so maybe, I mean, Trudeau, okay, Trudeau's Trudeau, but listen, Trump's a deal maker, right? He ought to, he wouldn't have that. Uh, he doesn't have the gene to not ask the question, right? My mom used to always say the answer is no unless you ask, right? So he would have sort of just
Well,
come
maybe
across the
that's why
border
he
and
didn't
said,
like Trudeau. Maybe that's why he didn't like Trudeau, remember?
well, maybe he asked, but I
Maybe
don't know
he
that
asked and
he
Trudeau
did.
was like, there's no
Yeah,
business case.
I don't think that's the case. I don't think that it
Okay.
was ever brought up. I've never heard the storyline around the Trump administration wants to structure something such that Canada is the primary mineral supplier to the American economy. That's never been a thing. It's never been talked about that I'm aware
Not
of.
yet.
Okay, well, so the question is like it seems too obvious to me that Canada, as a massive territory, while we have minerals and we have um, the ability, or we have the supply to an extent that it just happens to be underground, What we don't have is
Or in the
there are two
north.
things that are missing. We don't have the capacity to do it, right? Our Canada is so unbelievably vast, that it's almost impossible to understand the scope unless you actually physically have been to the north, and how there's nothingness. There's like
Did you
no
know
infrastructure.
there's an Arctic Energy Resources Conference that happens in Calgary every year? So we're not
Hmm.
alone. There are people that have studied this that are like geologists and geophysicists and
Hmm.
engineers. Um, it's being studied. We're not alone in our thoughts here. Um,
Oh, I'm certain that we're not. My point is more, we have no. There are two problems. One is a will, right? That the idea of going to the middle of nowhere and putting something to the ground and extracting whatever it is that's there. Yes, there are technical complications to it, but practically speaking, it is more of a will problem than a understanding or of how to do it. We're a very good mining
well,
country, and there's
I'd like
lots
to
of
think that
knowledge.
we would do it in like with the ESG framework, you know?
No. So, okay, well, that's the second problem, is our regulatory environment is insanely punitive today. And the environmental constraints on any new project are, if you have an idea for a mine, 15 years from now, maybe you'll
Maybe
be approved,
25 years from now,
or
you'd get a
25
permit.
years from now, or maybe you won't. And like, who practically speaking is interested in trying to figure that one out? Notwithstanding that 15 to 25 years on rare earth minerals, when China
Is
is
doing it
has an
now.
embargo, is totally unhelpful to what has to happen, right?
Hmm.
So
And they have refining capacity as well. So,
absolutely, I mean, all of this needs to be built. um, Canada has neither the capital nor the will to do it on its own, or
it's
the
all been
regulatory
chased
environment.
off. Like
And so we
everybody's
need
brought
to
their money somewhere else.
That's right. So we need to be able to reorganize ourselves as a country to facilitate this, and then partner with the right partner. I would suggest it's the United States, to bring capital investment and the sort of like the will and the gumption to go to the middle of nowhere, set up shop, and start extracting. And yes, of course, it has to be done within the right environmental framework, so as not to just spoil the land and so on and so forth. We have a certain set of constraints around native treaties that have to be somewhat respected.
Partnerships.
Partnerships. So anyhow, this is, from my perspective, and I think you're echoing the sentiment.
Yeah, this is the
Canada,
first time we've agreed this conversation.
indeed. So I think that Canada really is well positioned to have
Hmm.
to be that partner. And if only the
If
Trump
only.
administration or Trump would stop slapping us across the face every time he gets a chance. Um, you know, he's going to
I
war,
mean, let's
and it
think
would be
about
good
it.
to have
The
friends.
mining companies aren't in the States either. Like Rio Tinto, BHP Billiton, Cominco is Canadian.
Yeah, tech. Listen, the U.S. has lots of mining capabilities. Canada has lots of mining companies and capability. Um, the amount of investment that is required is ginormous.
Astronomical.
It's astronomical and
Colossal.
colossal.
It's so
And
big.
the Canadian, the capital is in part going to come from Canada, but largely not going to come from Canada. We probably don't want it coming from China. And so,
No, because we
we're
think
in.
that there's forced labor there. So it's
Well,
like,
listen, regardless of whether I'm less concerned about that.
yeah,
Where
no,
the mining is going to be.
it just makes the most sense for Canada to be a net exporter of
Of course
minerals.
it does. Well, and that being directly a neighbor to the United States would want to
Right.
partner on this, right?
It's like our
So it all
neighbor
makes.
wants it. They
Yeah,
want to build the fence. They want to build the deck. They want to build the garage. Like, let's get together, man.
let's do this. So anyhow, maybe this is a good place to
And
to end the conversation, but it just seems, in my mind, all the signs point to we want to be able to do this. I don't know that our prime minister, his current form,
Oh, but
which is
yeah,
Mark Carney,
we,
is positioned to do it,
yeah, but
and
we
it might
can't talk
require.
unscripted. So if we think that this is the right thing to do, we should just say it, and that's the right thing to do.
It is absolutely the right thing to do. So we might have to wait for the election, and hopefully we're going to have a new prime minister that is more amenable to this kind of conversation. And anyway, until next time, Benita.
So,
Uh,
like, our next time is going to be on election, like the election week, I think.
it's going to be close. It's certainly going to be
Let's
close.
see. Let's see.
I think the 28th. Yeah, it might be. The election might have happened.
Oh yeah, because we're going to be like 2 weeks from now is like May. Oh
May
shit! What
1st.
time?
It's all right. This is unscripted,
We're gonna have
Benita.
to
You can say
edit
whatever
it.
you want.
We're gonna have to edit this.
We're not
Okay.
editing that out. This is not a kids show.
No closing thoughts, Grant.
I mean, I am somewhat in awe of how quickly things are moving. I feel as though every 2 weeks when we meet, the world has changed, like upended itself again. So I'm just curious to see what will happen in the next 2 weeks. I'm always reminded of the old Chinese proverb, it was really a curse. May you live in interesting times. Uh, I was cursed by an old colleague with that, and I believe that we're living it out. And maybe it's my fault. So anyhow, what about you?
Um, I was talking to my mom the other day, and she watches Chinese news, so she gets a different point of view. And I asked her if she needed a ride to the polling station, and then she told me who she was going to vote, and I was like, "You're going to have to get your ride somewhere else."
Oh, okay, and there it is. I think you need to. I think you need to drive her to the polling station and then talk to her on the way about how
I don't know if I can change her mind. This is my mother.
uh, you gotta listen to her or steal her ID and then go vote for her. I am not suggesting you do that. I'm not really. I'm just saying.
I'm going to vote the way I vote. And, like, as you can see, I'm like in full austerity mode. I'm like moved from a high rise tower downtown into like a basement suite. And I'm saving money. Like, there ain't going to be contracts for me forever, I think.
Well,
I'm going to end the
let's.
recording.
All right. See you later.
Hopefully, is it Justin or Sean? Who does the editing?
Oh, Brad.
Yeah. Brad, please edit that out.
All right.